Namtalu Cave. On October 13, 2007, 9 people entered Namtalu Cave, located in Khao Sok National Park in Thailand. The group consisted of 6 tourists, 4 Swiss nationals, a 10-year-old boy from Germany, and a teenage girl from the United Kingdom, as well as 2 Thai guides. The cave was known for its scenic passages filled with shallow water. During the dry season, guided tours were common, but this tour was organized during Thailand's rainy season. The group visited the cave in the afternoon. There was no rainfall in the area that morning. The weather was good. However, in the nearby mountainous regions where the cave's watershed begins, there had been rainfall at higher elevations. Because Namtalu is part of a complex drainage system, it is highly sensitive to sudden floods from upstream basins. As the group moved through the cave, they followed the path of a stream passage that gradually became deeper. Although the guides noticed that the water level was rising, they ignored it and continued deeper into the cave. Very soon, the cave was suddenly flooded. The water rose rapidly, and the smaller areas of the cave were submerged. Panic ensued. The guide immediately took action and instructed everyone to climb to the highest possible point inside the cave. Some managed to reach this area. The remaining individuals were lost in the current. The cave began to fill with water, leaving no air pockets. The narrow passages, flooded by the surge, gave the group no chance to escape. Only 1 person survived the cave. The remaining 8 people lost their lives. Only the British teenage girl survived because she managed to climb onto a narrow ledge above the water. After more than 16 hours, the British teenage girl was rescued by rescue teams. Everyone else was found dead. Among the deceased was the 10-year-old child from Germany. The incident suddenly became a global news story. Authorities intervened and seasonally suspended visits to the cave. Every year, from June to November, the cave would be closed to visitors due to the risk of flash floods. Warning signs were placed at the entrance to alert visitors. Local tour companies were warned not to organize tours during this period. This process continued for about 10 years, but inspections were inadequate. Some tour operators continued to secretly run cave tours during the rainy season when surface weather conditions appeared safe. The risk was not taken as seriously as it should have been. When the date showed August 6, 2024, a group entered the officially closed Namtalu Cave. The group consisted of 22 tourists and 2 Thai guides. At the time, the weather was good. It had rained the previous evening, but that morning was sunny. The group began the tour in the afternoon, 5 p.m. Just as the group was about to exit the cave, a flood occurred. Water from the upper watersheds reached the cave. The force of the water trapped the group inside. Thai rescue teams immediately responded to the incident. They managed to evacuate the tourists and one of the guides. However, the second guide, a 37-year-old man, was swept away by the current, and his lifeless body was found a short time later. When the flood hit him, he was helping others escape. Following the incident, an investigation was launched. Park services confirmed that the cave was closed at the time of the incident. It was determined that the responsible tour company had violated the seasonal closure policy. Legal action was taken against the operator for negligence. After the 2024 incident, park authorities tightened safety measures. Despite this, concerns continue. The Namtalu Cave disasters rank among the most preventable cave deaths. Schroeder's Pants Cave. On February 13, 1965, 3 members of the Boston Grotto Club set out to explore Schroeder's Pants Cave, located near the small town of Dolaville at the foothills of the Adirondack Mountains, in New York State. The group consisted of 23-year-old chemist James Mitchell from Massachusetts, nurse Hetty Miller, and Charles Bennett, a graduate student at Harvard University. Before entering the cave, Mitchell wanted to see a local man, George Lyon, who had originally discovered the cave in 1947 together with Herb Schroeder. Lyon gave them information about the layout of the cave, but did not warn them about the conditions inside. That week, temperatures had hovered near freezing, which increased surface runoff. Ice-cold water was now flowing through the cave passages. Despite this, they entered the cave. They passed through sections known as Lemon Squeeze, Zebend, and Gun Barrel, and eventually reached an open chamber containing a vertical shaft approximately 80 feet, or 24 meters deep, opening into a bell-shaped cave below. Mitchell was the first to descend. He secured himself to the safety lines and began lowering himself down, but something was wrong. He stopped halfway and was in serious trouble. According to Miller's account, Mitchell first tried to continue descending, then attempted to climb back up the rope. However, he was unable to move in either direction. Water flowing down the shaft was hitting him directly. According to rescue reports, approximately 10 gallons, or 38 liters of ice-cold water were pouring onto his head every minute. The cold took hold of him rapidly. Mitchell's strength began to fail. He became unable even to cry out. Eventually, he fell completely silent. Bennett and Miller struggled for 45 minutes to pull him up by the rope, but they could not move him. Realizing the situation was beyond what they could handle on their own, Bennett left the cave to seek help. The newly formed National Capital Grotto Rescue Team was flown in from Washington, D.C., aboard Air Force 2. The operation quickly became a national headline. Among the 6 young rescuers was Doug Bradford. None of them had real cave rescue experience. They were trained, but inexperienced. They entered the cave and quickly reached the shaft. On their first attempt to pull Mitchell up by the rope, they realized that he was no longer alive. Bradford later stated that Mitchell's body was limp, and they immediately understood that this was no longer a rescue, but a recovery operation. The team began widening sections of the cave in order to retrieve the body. They worked for 3 days to create enough space. However, during an attempt to stabilize the area, part of the shaft collapsed. Soil and debris began filling the cave. It was no longer safe to continue. With Mitchell's body still hanging from his safety harness, the cave was sealed. The main entrance was closed with explosives. Large rocks were placed over the collapse, and a memorial gravestone was erected nearby. Pier San Martin Cave. In August 1952, an international speleological expedition was organized to the Pier Saint Martin cave system, located in the Pyrenees on the border between France and Spain. At the time, it was considered the deepest cave in the world. Among the team was 33-year-old French engineer and experienced cave explorer Marcel Lobens. He was second in seniority after the expedition leader, Belgian Professor Cossan. The team remained underground for nearly a week, installing rope ladders, discovering new passages, and mapping vertical shafts deep within the mountain. On Wednesday, August 27th, after 6 days underground, Lobens was being hauled upward through a vertical shaft as part of the exit from the cave, using a steel cable attached to a winch system. However, just as he was being pulled up through the final section, the cable snapped. Lobens fell approximately 130 feet, or nearly 40 meters, down a rocky slope into the shaft. He survived the fall, but the impact broke his spine. Shortly afterward, he lost consciousness and fell into a coma. He was now lying unconscious at a depth of 1,260 feet, or 384 meters, below the surface, in one of the deepest sections of the cave system. Despite all the difficulties, a rescue operation was launched. Team members descended to him using rope ladders. A doctor entered the cave to assess Lobens' condition. In the cold and damp chamber, working only by headlamp and candlelight, he did everything he could. A blood transfusion was performed inside the cave. Extraordinary medical procedures were taking place underground. Rescue teams stabilized him as much as possible. Over the next 2 days, under narrow and dangerous conditions, they attempted to slowly haul him toward the surface, using a manual winch system. However, as the rescue progressed, rocks within the shaft began to loosen. Falling stones now posed a serious danger, not only to Lobens but also to the cavers working below. On the evening of August 29th, after approximately 36 hours of rescue efforts, Marcel Lobens died underground. George Bugrada Cave. On February 6, 2014, 5 experienced Finnish cave divers were preparing to enter one of Europe's most dangerous underwater cave systems. Located in northern Norway, this system was known as Pluragrota, also referred to as the George Bugrota Cave. Their goal was extremely ambitious: to dive through an underwater passage 420 feet, or 130 meters deep, reach the other side of the mountain, and resurface in a remote dry cave chamber. This journey required strict discipline and flawless teamwork. The divers were using closed-circuit rebreather systems that recycle breathing gas, allowing them to remain underwater for extended periods. The team was prepared for everything, but this cave had already been the scene of tragic stories. The tunnels were extremely narrow, the water temperature was close to freezing, and the depth pushed the limits of human endurance. At first, everything was going well. The divers advanced by following a fixed guideline running through the underwater passages. In complete darkness, maintaining buoyancy and balance, they moved in a staggered formation. After passing through tight restrictions, they reached the deepest point of the route. Visibility had decreased, and the tunnels were becoming increasingly unstable. Then something went wrong. A diver named Jari became trapped at a depth of approximately 110 meters. He was stuck in a narrow passage between 2 rock walls, a point where movement was extremely difficult even under ideal conditions. He could move neither forward nor backward, and at the same time his rebreather began to malfunction. In moments like this, panic is deadly. Another diver, Patrick, tried to help, but the tunnel was too narrow for both of them to move together. Visibility dropped rapidly, and the water temperature was just above freezing. Silt rising from the cave floor filled the tunnel completely, and visibility was lost entirely. Jerry's breathing accelerated, and shortly afterward his mouthpiece came out of his mouth. Patrick desperately tried to hold him, insert a backup regulator, and free his partner's arm, but he was unsuccessful. He had to make a choice: stay there and die with him, or leave and seek help. He left. When he returned to the surface, the remaining divers realized that something was wrong. 2 people were missing. Emergency services were notified, and within hours the Norwegian police closed the cave. Authorities stated that the bodies could not be recovered, but the team did not accept this decision. Several weeks later, a new plan was secretly made. A group of Finnish divers, including close friends of the deceased, returned to the cave despite official orders. For approximately 100 hours, this time solely for recovery purposes, they re-entered the deadly system. They worked in complete silence. They advanced centimeter by centimeter through the same narrow passages where their friends had lost their lives. When they reached the point where Jari had died, they found his body still suspended in the tight restriction. His rebreather was filled with water, and his arms were frozen in the position of his final escape attempt. Behind him, deeper inside the cave, they found Kai, believed to be the second diver. He had died while trying to reach or assist Yari. Most of his equipment was intact, but his breathable gas had run out long before help could reach him. They carefully secured the bodies and carried their friends back through the narrowest passages of the system. This operation was recorded as one of the most difficult recovery dives in history and was documented in the 2016 film Diving into the Unknown. If you enjoyed this video, don't forget to subscribe for similar content and share your suggestions for the next video in the comments.